This is Mrs. Tomasevich, and today I'm going to talk about how to analyze and evaluate websites to be sure you get the best information possible. This is part of the eWISE research process, and it falls under the Investigate part, where you locate and find information to answer your essential questions. My essential question today is, why is it important to evaluate the source and validity of the information found on the web? Have you ever ordered something online and ended up with something that was broken or not at all what you thought you were getting? Have you done research for school but been frustrated because you think you might be getting bad information, or you find different facts at different websites? Most of us have. That's why it's important to be a good detective when you're using internet resources. So let's talk about criteria to use to evaluate whether or not you're getting good information. There are 6 things to look for: authority, accuracy, objectivity, currency, presentation, and purpose. Let's talk first about authority. That has to do with the author of the website. It should be clear on a website who wrote the page. Anybody can create a website, right? But why are they qualified to write this page? If you're getting information for a school project, you need to make sure that the person who created the website you're using is an expert on the topic. You might also look to see if you can contact them in a way other than just email. Any website done for an educational or scholarly reason will have contact information for the person. If there's no person listed as the author of your website, there should at least be an organization who's responsible for it. The next topic is accuracy. Information should always be error-free. You can compare it against information you get from a second website to make sure that you have a trusted resource. And one thing that always starts a red flag for me is if a web page has spelling and grammar errors. Objectivity. A site should present both sides of an issue. Now, the time when it might not do that, some nonprofit organizations are supporting one side of an issue. For example, ethical treatment of animals or something like that. Their website might be biased in one direction, and that's fine. You still can get good information. However, if your school project is to look at both sides of an issue, for example, whether or not animals should be used for scientific testing and research, you're going to want to make sure that you get information on both sides of that. A website used for school projects shouldn't really have a lot of advertising, and if it does, it should be clearly marked as that. Next is currency. That's how up-to-date the website is. The great thing about using web resources is that they should give you the latest information out there. Information from a book can be several years old, but if you're using information from a website, it should be recently updated. Also, if you click on many of the links and they're broken, that might indicate to you that the website is a little bit older and the links are no longer up to date. Next is presentation. That's not tremendously important. You can get good scholarly information from a site that might be a journal or something and doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, but the site should at least be easy to navigate. It doesn't have to look beautiful, but there should be a good balance between text and graphics. It's also nice when a website has a place that you can do a search, or it has an index to list all the topics that's on it. And the last thing is purpose. Why is the website there? Was it created as a public service? Created as an educational site for students to use? Is it just to entertain or perhaps to sell things? All right, let's look at a few examples. This first site I want to show you is called EarthSave, Healthy People, Healthy Planet. The first thing I notice about this is the presentation. It's not that great. There are some links down here, but there's something wrong with the way they're displayed, and you can't really read them or see where you're supposed to click. Then, if I read down a little bit further, I can see that the article, although it might give him good information, is a little bit old, December 2008. There's also an author listed, Dan Childs, but it doesn't give you that person's credentials, so I have no idea if he's a reporter for the site or he's an expert in his field. When I did a quick Google search for him, it's a common name, but I couldn't find anything at all on him. Good things are that the site tells you a little bit about the organization and why it's there. There is a way to contact them by both email and a street address. But when I read down here through this article, it talks about an international study and then something called Living Planet, the Living Planet report. But it never gives links to those. It doesn't tell me anything about them. So the information might be good, it might be accurate, but I think I would want to double check it against another website. The next example is a site called Oncolink. It's cancer resources, so a lot of cancer information on this site. And I noticed right away it's got a good presentation. It's a very attractive site. There are drop-down menus that are super helpful. Everything is organized in an alphabetical order. There's a search box, which is handy, that you can search to get to the information you need. They do have a donate button. I don't really know why that's there, but it's not a big deal. And then scrolling down on the website, once again, there's lots of good links. It gives you a lot of good information at the bottom, and then this is real important. There's no author's name, but it does tell me down here that the University of Pennsylvania is responsible for this website, and it has been recently updated. I would say this is probably a good site to get information about cancer. This next site is some sort of online journal. I'm not really clear on what it is. It's the editorial page for Journal Now Home, and the article is titled Unhealthy Mountain Air. There's no author listed. Presentation is not too good. It doesn't have many attractive graphics. There are two things that bother me a lot about this website. The first is that it talks about experts, doctors and other health officials, officials at Great Smoky Mountains National Park, legislators. It mentions all those groups and all those people, but it never gives you any names. I have no idea where they got the information from to put this article together. Then the other thing I notice if I scroll to the bottom is how old the article is. 2000 is not a good source for unhealthy mountain air, which probably has changed quite a bit in the last 14 years. This is kind of a cool site. It is called Boilerplate, and it's all about a robot that was built in the 1800s. And if you go back to Boilerplate's homepage, let me find this. There we go. If you go back to the homepage, there's a book all about Boilerplate, the history of this robot. There are some quotes over here from different newspapers that have reviewed it. It's a masterpiece and a delight, soon to be a major motion picture from J.J. Abrams. Then there are several links. You can learn all about the robot. You can see how he served as a soldier in many different wars. He even went to Antarctica. As I begin to look at some of these pictures, I can notice these look a little bit fake. And if you do a little more research on the site, you'll find that it's a totally fake website. There's nothing real about Boilerplate. There actually is a book that the people that created the site have published and put on Amazon, but all the rest of it is made up. Totally fake website. Then let's take a look at this one called Ban Dihydrogen Monoxide. It is talking about this chemical that's an invisible killer. It gives some statistics from the World Health Organization. And gives some information on it. Not a very attractive website. It's got a few links at the bottom. I'm not really clear on the date it was copyrighted and published, 1995-2 XXX, not sure. But what struck me the most was up here at the top, where it talks about a quote from Secretary of State Jim Kerry. Well, the Secretary of State is John Kerry, Kerry. It has a quote from President Barack Obama, which is not how he spells his name. And as you look into the website a little bit more, you find out that it's not just misspelled words on the site. It too is a fake site. This chemical doesn't actually exist. In another lesson, I'll talk about online sources that aren't websites and are bound to give you good information, like databases and the school's reference ebooks.